Today, we are focusing on the interesting challenges of being a young entrepreneur by talking with an expert who has worked on innovation projects in companies across Europe and currently mentors student startups trying to build viable business models. This is for any listener who wants to create their own company, wants to know how to finance their projects, and learn what it takes to gain a leg up in the startup community. Here is our conversation with Nico Valenti Gatto, the Operating Director at B4i, Bocconi for Innovation, and a Bocconi alumnus. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Nico. It's a great pleasure to welcome you on the Talent Show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have worked with so many entrepreneurs, and especially from the student side, so the early career ones. So I would be very interested to know from your experience what entrepreneurial traits you have seen in these people, in these younger entrepreneurs, and what of these traits can be a real predictors of success.
I think the trait can be categorized in two different categories, basically. One, which are traits which would be great regardless of what your job is, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, and others that are explicitly a bit more linked to the fact that you're an entrepreneur. So a lot of these traits are valuable regardless of the role that you occupy and the job you're in. But if you are professional, reliable, transparent, honest, succinct, clear, knowledgeable, and smart, that's going to make a massive difference. And I know it sounds obvious, but it's very hard to find those traits together and with the right balance, mixed also with an element of self-awareness. So are you aware of what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are? And so do you know where you might need help when it comes to, I guess, filling the gaps that you know that you have? And are you open to communicating about the fact that you do have certain gaps that you need help on? Then going back to the maybe the traits that are a bit more linked to being an entrepreneur, obviously you have to be obsessed with execution. You have to be absolutely, driven by tasks and getting them done step by step, one after the other, and seeing a business grow. And you have to be absolutely like almost a magician in getting things done. And that means a lot of things, like bringing people on board. So convincing people that you are a great founder to work with and that you want people to join your team, and then to stick with you even through the hard times. And that you've got to convince people to invest in your business, convince people to buy your products and your solution. So you're basically selling the whole time different aspects of your business to different people, but it's always selling and you're always trying to get to that next stage. And these things, again, the right mix make a huge difference. And it's hard to find that.
You're talking about this mix, and I'm quite interested about as well another mix that we have seen idolatrized in a certain way from certain movies. I'm thinking about The Wolf of Wall Street. How do you balance the kind of killer instinct of being a shark with being transparent and nice?
I think being a shark sounds nasty, but what it can also mean is that you're really determined. But you can also be really determined and humble at the same time, which is an even better mix to have because it means that you know when you've made a mistake, you're ready to admit it, and you're ready to improve and move on and accept other people's opinions. And you accept the fact that other people might correct you or give you recommendations and suggestions. And that doesn't mean that you're not a shark if you're humble. In fact, being a shark doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be trusted and that all you're thinking about is making money. If what you're thinking about is growing your business in the best possible way, you can still be a shark in doing that. It doesn't mean you have to be a nasty person because nobody likes to work with a nasty person. Adding a little bit of humility to the obsessive research for growth is possible, and that's what I'm getting at here.
I totally get what you're saying. Maybe there is here a piece of advice that you can give, having seen so many early stage startuppers. What has been maybe the common piece of advice at the very beginning of their startup journey that you have seen yourself giving them?
I think it's to be self-aware. So know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are. Being self-aware is a fantastic and quite a strong and stable starting point to know where you can go and how you can get there, and what you need to get there. So not to get big-headed and lose track of reality or to think, you're some kind of superhero No one really is. And that really helps. So this self-awareness. And then to be factual and to track and measure everything that you do so that what you say and what you ask for is based on facts that you can show and that no one can say anything if you just show that those facts are the results that you've reached, the reason for which you're asking for something, the reason for which you have made a certain decision rather than another one. So being obsessed by showing the progression you've made by tracking it and measuring it.
When it comes to ask for the financial support, of course, what would you recommend for those seeking financial support to be doing during these challenging times, the challenging economy? What is your piece of advice in terms of convincing venture funds to support their ideas?
You're right, it's not an easy time. Everyone's saying it. It's not happy at the moment, but that doesn't mean it's not possible to raise funds. What I would say is that never to lose track of the big picture. So the objective isn't to raise funds, it's to build your business. It's to help your business grow and to build a solution, a product, or a service that your end users, your customers really will die for and will really want. So that is why you're an entrepreneur. Sometimes, in order to do that, you need to raise funds. So again, let's not forget what the priority is here. It's to build a business, not to raise funds. However, sometimes you need to raise funds to build the business. So I understand that that's difficult. But anyway, to do that, it's a matter of building the relationship and from going for the long run. So it means informing your potential investors of where you are, what progress you're making, talking to investors even before you start fundraising and bringing them on board with what you're doing, making them understand the value that you're bringing to the market and why you as a founder are someone that's worth backing. And that takes time, that takes transparency, that takes great communication of what you're doing, how you're doing it, being clear about it. Again, being transparent, saying, for example, if this month we incurred a problem, we're wrapping our heads around how to solve it. Actually, if you can help us, that would be great. Never be ashamed of reaching out, asking for people's help, because if they're interested, they will help. And that will make them probably even more engaged with your business and with you as a founder, and potentially more likely to invest in you when the time will come. So what I'm saying is to build a relationship from afar and keep them informed.
And I think this is such an important point that, of course, can be applied to startups, but to any of our listeners that are building their career at the early stage. So, like, don't be afraid of asking for help. And I have another point here. It's touching again on money, but smart money. You have been talking about this in the past already with us during the FTX Bocconi challenge. You say, okay, people should be looking for smart money. It's not just the benefits in terms of like finances and balance sheets. What entrepreneurs and startups can get out of VCs and, as you were saying, their allies in terms of benefits.
I mean, this is again a concept that's been talked about a lot, and I don't think I'll be saying anything new. Before I get into the actual answer, I'll add a small bit, and that is that some entrepreneurs might not necessarily be looking for smart money all the time. Like sometimes they know what they need, know what they want. They just need an investor that doesn't get in the way. Just give me your money. I'll know what to do with it. And if you don't want to be on my board and help me out with some of the operations, that's fine. Some founders can be happy with just the money and not with the smart money. That said, some founders do look for the smart money and they need that. And that means looking for an investor who really understands the business, who has experience in that market, who maybe has made investments in similar companies, so who can bring experience and an improvement in your decision making, the right contacts and the right network, and who's also someone who can challenge you, I guess, almost constantly, because otherwise you won't grow as a founder and you won't be able to make steps in the way in which you drive and build and grow your business. Because especially in early stage, the relationship between a VC or an investor and entrepreneur is more than anything else actually a human relationship, and which goes on for years because seed investments can stay in the portfolio of a VC fund for even up to say 8 years or so. And that means that for all that time, you might have someone on your board. you have to end up working with sometimes on a daily basis, especially at the early stages of the investment. So you've got to be able to build that relationship of trust, and the investors have to bring a new team member basically on board. And that can be very, very challenging. It can be very hard. And if the relationship all of a sudden breaks because, I don't know, trust becomes an issue, or you don't feel that this investor's bringing everything that you thought that he or she could bring on board, then you start being disappointed. So it's a human relationship. It really is.
I would love to leverage a bit on your experience in different cities: Milano, London, Paris, different cultures, and definitely different money available. The magnitude that all these different cities can bring in terms of money pools available for, of course, entrepreneurs.
In terms of number of deals, Paris recently has, if I'm not mistaken, actually overtaken London, which means that there's a lot of stuff going on constantly, and that France has grown immensely. When I say France, it's pretty much Paris driven, to be honest. But in terms of number of deals and amount invested, I mean, for example, last year in 2021, in France and in Germany as well, there were just over 10 billion euro invested in startups. If we think of Italy, last year it was 1.2, I think of 1.2 billion. Yes, the percentage growth rate in Italy was really good because it's about twice as much. And the forecast for 2022 are that it'll grow just as much. So it could double again. But still, we're talking about 1/10 of what was in France last year and Germany. So if you're talking about magnitude, the amount of cash available in the UK, in France, and is much, much deeper than what's available in Italy. However, the trend is that it is growing in Italy, and that's good.
And in terms of like business culture differences, have you noticed anything that is an interesting point to make here in terms of like the three cities that you have experienced? Maybe, a different way to see the culture of making business that can be, a real indicator if it's a good cultural fit for you to move somewhere else from your local economy.
Yeah, there are differences. There are differences mostly, as far as I'm seeing, between the UK and the more Latin countries. Bear in mind, I grew up in London. I would say that I'm completely at ease with with working in the UK and in London. France and Italy, which are the two countries that I know, I think are extremely similar in terms of work cultures and workplace cultures, and even approach to like risk and so on. However, France has evolved a lot over the past 8 to 10 years, and I think Italy has a lot to learn from France when it comes to the entrepreneurial support that entrepreneurs can receive, and the approach that certain investors have and that VCs have, I think is something that would be great to see in Italy at the moment as well. The thing is that there's far more cash available in France than there is in Italy, although Italy is improving a lot. So the size of funds in France is bigger, so the check sizes are a bit bigger, seed rounds are a bit bigger. There's a bit more kind of, I guess, availability in France than in Italy right now.
I'm gonna add this. I just want a very light-hearted point here. Definitely in Silicon Valley, they have a particular way of seeing their fashion. So it's kind of like they can even go on with their pajamas to the office, right? Or like they have more of a jeans and t-shirt style. Definitely a bit different, maybe in Italy and France. I would love, again, we are very light-hearted note, so quite quick one. But what should entrepreneurs in Italy and Europe should be dressing to impress?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've never actually thought of that, to be honest. If I meet a very young entrepreneur and he or she really dresses up for the interview, like suit and tie or a really, really nice dress for the interview for an investment, I feel that's slightly out of touch, if I have to be very honest. It feels like there was no need for that, you know? I mean, I would think you look really smart, that's really nice, but I would say, let's focus on the business here. Because again, light-hearted comment and prejudice that could be really idiotic. Like, does this reflect maybe a more old school approach to doing business than what some other founders might be or investors might be looking for? However, that said, this should not become a prejudice. Like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what you wear if I'm interviewing you or if you're meeting for an investment, you should wear what you're comfortable with, because you can see the opposite as well. You can see people who would be more comfortable in a suit and tie, wanting to wear a hoodie or a t-shirt because they think that that's kind of the cool thing to do, but you can see it's kind of odd. Just wear whatever you feel comfortable with.
In terms of entrepreneurs and of course preparation to be mentally prepared as a young entrepreneur for the challenge of starting a venture-backed business, knowing of course all the difficulties and the odds of success are typically around just 10%. How do you mentally prepare yourself, and maybe even how you accept, I don't want to say failure, but the high chances that it's not going to work, even if it got venture-backed?
This, I think, depends on also the entrepreneur's age, which is a very, very slippery slope, because you should not have an age bias when you're deciding, who to invest in. You can see sometimes is that if the entrepreneur is younger, and I don't know what we mean by that age, but let's just say younger than 50 or 40 years of age, then the approach to risk can be very different. Because if this person, let's say, doesn't have a family or hasn't given up God knows what to start a new business, then the I'm going all in, make it or break it attitude will probably be a bit simpler or closer to that stage in life than someone who is older and has maybe more responsibilities. And if it goes bust, then whoa, I have a mortgage, I have a family. That can make an impact on the approach, on the mental preparation for that.
So maybe to our young listeners that are the audience for this podcast show, this is your moment. And maybe when you are progressing in your life, it's definitely, as Nico was saying here, more responsibilities and really as well, maybe even other priorities.
I wouldn't think about that. I would do what is necessary for the business to grow. And if you firmly believe in what you're doing, then again, because you're factual about the way you make your decisions and so on, even if it all goes downhill, you'll have at least done what you believed in, and you will be able to justify what you did and learn from it. No, so I wouldn't go about running a business with the constant fear of going bust. The crime you commit is not failing, it's not learning from that experience so you can build from it. People who do nothing don't fail. Of course they don't fail because they're not doing anything. People who do fail are those who actually try to do something, right? But then the crime is not the failure itself, it's not learning from it. So as you were just saying, you can build from that and do something better next time.
Now, final part of our podcast. The special thing about the talent show is that we are asking our alumni and listeners and early career professionals from all over the world to submit their questions. So we got 2 questions for you today. So the first question that we have is from Charlotte Gray, that is a recent graduate from a Masters of Science in International Management. And our question for you is the following.
Hello, my name is Charlotte. I was a participant in the FT Talent Challenge in 2019. I'm originally from London, but I'm also half French and half Australian. I'm currently working as a junior product manager, but also launched an app called Unimate a couple of years ago. My question to Professor Nico Valenti Gatto is, we've had the COVID crisis and now rising inflation. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing entrepreneurs right now, and what do you think they can do to mitigate against them? Thank you so much, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay. Thanks, Charlotte, for the question. It is, a very valid one, also very broad. I would say think of a fundamental need that needs addressing and build the best possible team around you to come up with a solution to that need. Again, it's a very vague answer to a very broad question, but it's extra valid now because investors will be looking for even more solid businesses and reliable teams to invest in. And it's just going back to basics almost, and working really hard on those basics.
And the second question for you is from Peng Feige, that is working for a venture capital and private equity principals company, and is really researching around Foresight Ventures. And this is a question for you.
Hello, my name is Bonfiga. I was a participant of the FTX Bocconi Talent Challenge in 2021. I am originally from China and now work in China too. I am currently doing research and investments in Foresight Ventures, a leading pan-Asia crypto venture capital.
Just
My question
summarizing
to
high
Professor
overview
Nico
answers,
Valenti
but
Gatto
that's
is,
what I would say.
as a startup founder, it is very important to find business partners who are on the same page. What are the most significant characteristics or traits you think I should focus on when looking to collaborate? Thanks, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, Peng Fei, thanks a lot for the question. I'd like to spend more time on this because it is a very valid point. The traits and characteristics of a business partner are, okay, are they bringing value to your own business? Are they solving an issue that you've got? Are they accelerating your growth and simplifying your path? And alongside that, do you trust them? Do you see yourself working with them over the mid to long term? Because that's far more valuable than the immediate short-term gains that you can think of. It would waste so much time to have to start again because the relationship doesn't work.
A bit like a marriage or
It's exactly the same thing.
so
It's relationships and business. I mean, it's still people, right? So it's the same thing.
So, thank you so much, Nico, for being with us today. I think we got so many different points that we can take away here. And I can't wait to meet you again for our next challenge. So, thank you so much, Nico.
Thank you very much, Virginia. It's been a real pleasure.
This has been The Talent Show, which is produced by the FT Talent team, Aya Al-Shihabi, Noor Hafez, and me, Virginia Stagni. Our podcast producer is Todd Van Luling. Our editor and sound engineer is Arturo Ochoa. Our video producer is Enrique Zecca. And our social media producer is Letizia Clementi. Our music is by Dennis Kishuk. Check out all of the Talent Show episodes at fttalent.ft.com. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow FT Talent on socials for updates. Until next time, and keep listening.